In the quiet corners of upstate New York, where the wind carries secrets and history is buried deeper than the earth itself, lie stories the world was never meant to hear. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, injustice, and silence. From letters never answered, to voices lost in corridors. From dreams crushed beneath diagnoses, to the shuffling steps of a forgotten rainmaker. Each life mattered. Each name meant something. Each story still echoes. Truths from the insane asylum in upstate New York. These are the whispers of the forgotten. In 1940, Edward, a patient at Binghamton State Hospital. Staff often found him staring out the window toward the horizon. His room was bare, aside from a bed, and a small table with a drawer, where he kept a small notepad and a pencil, to keep contact with his daughter, Elizabeth. Following are 3 letters to Elizabeth written over a period of 8 months in 1940 to 1941. The first 2 letters are from her father, Edward. Dear daughter, I wish you would come down and get me. They have stopped me here at the state hospital and I want to come home. January 15th. The next, as you see in the picture, he has depleted greatly in his writing. Dear daughter, I am trying write you a few times to let you know that I still here in the hospital. I have been almost at broken up. I am wanting to come up there so awful bad that I don't know what to do with myself. June 25, 1941. The third letter is from the superintendent of the hospital. Dear Madam, I am writing you in regard to your father, a deceased former patient in this hospital. No further explanation for Edward was available. Impressions of a Rainmaker. I worked on the violent ward of the Binghamton State Hospital. We had a patient who sat all day in a chair and shuffled his feet back and forth. He refused shoes. Said they blocked the earth's rhythm. He would hum softly, an otherworldly tune no one could quite replicate. Nurses chalked it up to delusion, but some started humming it themselves. The patient used to call himself ZZZ Waif Rainmaker Father Mother Simon Joseph Francis Carl. He said he was the maker of heaven and earth. He sat in his chair in the hallway and shuffled all day. So much that he had actually wore grooves into the wood floor. After he passed, new patients who didn't even know his name began sitting in his chair, claiming they can still hear the shuffling of his feet. Staff say the sound of his shuffling never stopped. Even to this day it's said if you stand near the grooves in the floor, you can hear a odd humming and the shuffle of feet. Lucy. Lucy was born in the Catskill region of New York in 1829. In 1855, at age 26, she wrote an autobiography. In the narrative, she mentioned a need for equal pay for women, and stated that she planned to leave home dressed as a man, to earn more money. Shortly after that, she changed her name from Lucy to Joseph. Later she met Marie, and in 1868 they were married and lived a secret life together until 1879. It was that year that Lucy's death was reported in the newspapers. But in fact, because of her male behavior, she was committed in 1879 to the Willard Asylum, then transferred to the asylum at Binghamton, where she remained for 33 years until her death in 1912. Lucy was buried in the asylum cemetery, the numbered plate long gone. Her grave is marked by a small pile of stones. Stepping out. I'll never forget a patient by the name of Henry. Made a key out of a toothbrush handle, and the damn thing actually opened the ward door. He went out the door in the main hallway. Henry didn't run. He strolled down the stairs right past the director's office and took off. Eyewitnesses claimed he nodded politely at staff on his way out. Rumors say he even took a newspaper from the director's desk. In those days, the safety department and someone from the ward that knew the patient would go after them. We found him in a garage on Telegraph Street, nearly 8 miles from the hospital, hiding under a blanket, and returned him to the ward. When asked why he escaped, he simply said, "Because I could." Make it or break it. William had strong feelings about social injustice. He had dreams of a better world and believed he could make a difference. I remember January 1953 when two men knocked at the door and said, "The doctor at the state hospital wants to see you." I went along, made no objection when they ushered me into the hospital building to answer a few questions by the doctor, nor when they opened a heavy locked door and said, "Step inside for a couple of days." That couple days became nearly 2 years. Keeping meticulous notes during his hospitalization, William wrote, "I am tired of hearing Dr. L. and others tell me, 'You're a very sick man,' and by sick, meaning crazy, but never telling me why or how I am that way, for, they say, 'You're too sick to understand explanations.' So my ideas have to be knocked out by volts of electricity. All I would have to do to gain my freedom is to pretend that I no longer hold certain beliefs, and answer questions the way I know the doctors would prefer that I answer them. But I will not do this. Instead, I keep my faith." During his hospitalization, William underwent 100 sessions of shock treatment, first electroconvulsive, then metrazole, then insulin shock therapy. William sang hymns in the treatment room. Not to mock, but to survive. One nurse later admitted she wept behind the curtain during his sessions. On August 13, 1954, William was declared cured and released from the hospital. 6 months later, he published his memories in an autobiography, concluding to his readers, "So the dream which led me to the state hospital still has possession of me, and where it will lead me only the future can reveal. I go forward in hope, my whole future is in your hands, at your mercy." After his release, William testified at hearings on psychiatric abuse. A photo of him marching in Selma, holding a sign that read "Dignity is Sanity," is now displayed in the Smithsonian. Agnes, a Polish immigrant, lived in a small farmhouse in upstate New York with her husband and infant son Paul. In 1925, the farmhouse caught fire. Agnes grabbed her baby and tried to escape the flames. Almost free, the porch roof collapsed on them both. Protected in his mother's arms, Paul survived and as a child was told the story that he and his mother were pulled from the fire. His mother was sent to a nearby hospital where she died. It was 63 years later when Agnes' grandson attempted to locate his grandmother's medical records. Unsure where she had been admitted, he contacted the state hospital. They confirmed that Agnes was admitted in 1925. But she had not died at that time, and in fact was still living and still a patient at the hospital. Agnes, who spoke no English, had recurring visions of the fire. Declared insane and admitted to the asylum, she would never leave. Agnes often painted fire with her fingers in the air. Staff believed it was nonsense. One attendant, though, began sketching what she described: fiery angels with outstretched hands. Years later, a lobotomy was performed on Agnes, and she spent the rest of her life in a vegetative state. In 1988, Paul was reunited with his mother. When her son arrived in '88, Agnes looked at his face and whispered one word: home. 7 years later, she passed away at the asylum. Saturday morning. On Saturday mornings, all patients from the ward would be gathered in the day room. There was a table with wheels on it. We'd put it out in the middle of the room and 10 blankets were laid on it. Then 10 bed sheets would be dipped in a bucket of cold water and wrung out and laid on top of the 10 blankets. There would be 4 of us employees, 1 on each corner of the table, and the ward charge would come in. You could hear a pin drop as he walked around with his hands behind his back. Then he'd point and snap his finger at anybody that messed up during the week. They'd run over to the table, strip their clothes off and hop up on the table. We'd put a wet towel between their arms, against their side, and between their legs and proceed to pack them. You'd send a sheet over to the guys on one side, they'd grab it and snap it down and send the next sheet back over. All the way down, so we'd pack them up just like a mummy. Then the blankets were brought up around them, and we'd roll them off to a bed and tie them down. They'd stay in the wet packs for 6 hours, nothing showing but their feet and their heads. When we took the packs off after 6 hours, Their hand indentations would be about a half-inch right into their leg where they were pressed in. We'd pack between 8 to 12 patients every Saturday. The sheets were soaked in water, so they called it hydrotherapy. They quit packing later. I think it was around 59. Gerald, an 18-year-old patient, struggled so hard that he had a brain aneurysm. Before we could get him out of the pack, he died. So that was the end of the wet packs. The hydrotherapy room still exists. Peeling tile, rusted fixtures. Some say the walls remember. Gerald's story was buried until a janitor found his records decades later. Locked in a broken cabinet. His sister, now elderly, said, "He just needed a place to be safe." Staff meeting. Al was the director of recreation. He was very paranoid, always thinking people were out to get him. Of course, the other employees used to play on that and give him a hard time. Al's decline was invisible to most. He smiled too much. Laughed too loudly. He'd started drawing clocks with no hands. As a member of the staff, Al attended regular meetings in Dr. Gregory's office. At a staff meeting in January 1951, Al came into the room with a shotgun, planning to cause harm to the chief of police. The police chief ducked under a table. The head of maintenance raised his arm to block the gunshot. It went off, hitting him in the arm, and hitting the director in the shoulder. Al ran out the door into the hallway of Ward 2. Down the stairs and out the door under the front steps. The morning of the shooting, he left a note in his desk drawer that read, "I'm sorry I couldn't fix the time." Later, Al was found passed in a parked car at the corner of Depot Hill, an old state road. He had shot his dog and then took himself by running a hose from the exhaust into the car. After the incident, the hospital adopted new mental wellness programs for staff. His name was never mentioned again. Numbers. I used to take bodies from our morgue up to the cemetery to bury them. When a patient passed on the wards, they were washed and wrapped in a sheet, and the body was taken to the morgue. After the autopsy, the patient was dressed for burial with a black shroud that tied behind the neck. Male patients had a bow tie attached to the shroud. A casket was brought from Barn 6, and the body was placed in it. They would take it to the cemetery, and the backhoe operator would be there with the hole dug. Before we could close the grave, the water would be flowing in so fast the casket would start to float. After burying the casket, a number was placed on the grave site. I never knew of anyone attending these burials. In 1961, construction of an interstate highway forced the relocation of over 1,500 graves from the original asylum cemetery to another location on the property. When the graves were disturbed, the bulldozers paused briefly, then carried on. A groundskeeper kept a private list of names from old records. He called them his quiet choir. Now an open field with no markers and no indication of the 1,500 anonymous graves it holds. Today, families visit the grass lot, laying handmade crosses and painted stones. The state recently approved a memorial. It simply reads, "Known in spirit. Honored in memory."
Thank you again from Higher Demand. If you're enjoying this kind of content and want to keep diving deeper and seeking, subscribe to Higher Demand. There's a lot more where this came from, and we are just getting started. Hit that like button, drop a comment and stay tuned. Remember, the truth is always in higher demand.